Hi, everyone. Welcome. Come on in and get your favorite seat. Everybody gets a front row seat here. Welcome, welcome. We're glad to have you here today. Thank you, everyone, for joining us again for the Pure Presence book study, and it's sponsored by the Pure Presence Conferences, Rupert Spira. Thank you all for being here. I don't see my admin. Susan, are you here? Susan Telford, are you here? Or Lindsay? I don't see either one. So it looks like I might be solo today on that end. But I'm not solo. I'm not really solo because Melissa Goodnight is here. Hi, Melissa.
Hi, Bill. Hi, everyone. It's lovely to be here.
It's great to see you all. We're here a few days before Christmas. Merry Christmas, Happy Christmas, and Hanukkah. Or if you're an atheist, Happy You, blessings to you. We don't care. We're not prejudiced. We don't have limits on where we come from. Everyone is God. Everyone is God expressed, the reflection of love itself, and are welcome here. And it is my joy to be the host of this book study, being myself. And thank you all for taking the time to be with us this Christmas holiday and around the world. And Melissa and I were just talking for a few minutes before we invited all of you in. We do a sort of a few minutes, 10, 15-minute green room discussion before we get ready for everyone to come online. Melissa has been part of the book studies for over 3 years, since our second book, I think, The Transparency of Things. Is that right,
Yes,
Melissa?
right. That was my first experience in the book group.
Right. And we've done them all. And then we went to Jean Klein, Francis Lucille. And most of you know, if you were here from the first week, I am super excited about these ideas. I don't make an idol out of Francis or Rupert or Jean Klein, but man, if we have a living teacher right here, the author of these books that can be with us, man, I am just really excited about that. And when I think about that, if you know my wife, she was here last week, Lisa Natoli. She tells me a story where she had an opportunity to see John Denver in person, and then he had a plane wreck, and she didn't get to see him. So I think of it that way. And that's why I want to highlight and be grateful for Rupert. If you watch this recording or Rupert's people, we are so grateful for Rupert, but we do not put him or anyone else on a pedestal here. And Being Myself is an awesome book. Melissa and I were just talking about it before we opened up the room. And Melissa, I'm going to invite you to tell all of us what you said to me about this book.
Sure. So I wanted to just start with two just general comments. First of all, to recognize that this particular book is written with a very light poetic touch. It's not meant to be like a complete, in-depth analytical investigation of the non-dual teaching, which, by the way, there are many hundreds of books that are out there about the non-dual teaching. So this couldn't. There's no way that one book could possibly encompass it all. But because this is so spare and concise and so light in its touch, that it's very likely that, especially for people who are not, who haven't been studying the non-dual approach for very long, it's very likely that this book will raise more questions than it answers. And that's a good sign. Don't become frustrated by that. It's a good sign. It means that the teaching is starting to have an effect on you, and it's raising your interest. And if that's the case, then you may want to explore further beyond what this book can take you. But just don't get frustrated. Don't get discouraged. The nature of this book is to raise your interest. Then it may very well be that it will take you far and wide beyond this book. And
Thank
one
you.
other,
Thank you for
one,
that.
oh yes, and one other little comment in just a general comment about the non-dual teaching itself. Rupert tells about this, and many other teachers do as well. What is important? Why is the non-dual teaching of such importance? And really, the reason is because throughout human history, we have all wondered, what is this life where we find ourselves? Everyone has wondered that, and all the areas of human knowledge, and that includes science and art and music and literature, you name it. Every form of human knowledge tries to get at that essential question: what is this life that we are experiencing? And what is special about the non-dual approach is that it points out a very fundamental truth. You cannot truly know what anything else is unless you know what you, the one who is asking the question, what you really are. So, investigating being myself is an exploration of what it is to be the one experiencing all of life. And through that doorway, lo and behold, you find you can know the reality of everything else when you go through the doorway of being myself.
Yes, yes. I mean, it's the title says it all, right, Melissa?
Yes, yes,
Oh, Melissa, we're looking at chapter 2, our naked being.
yes.
I mean, as we were saying before we went live, this book, this thing right here, it has it all. This is the whole path right here.
Yes,
You
yes.
you can take this book, and if once you have understanding of what's in here, you don't need another book.
Yes, that's true. But I think what you'll find is that because it's so concise and so spare, that I think you'll see even in this chapter, there are a number of topics that really you would find worthwhile to explore more deeply. And by the way, I wanted to just note that as we explore what being myself really is, what you're going to find, what I'm continuing day by day to find, is that it is a radical departure from everything that we're accustomed to believing.
Yep. Yep, it is. And thank you, Susan, for making that mention on the chat. If anyone has a comment or a question, something aha that you would like to type in the chat, feel free to do that, participate in that way. And Lisa Natoli was our co-host last week. She's my wife, and we're right now entertaining 7 additional guests to our house. So she's not with us. She'll watch this as a replay. But one of the things that she mentioned was that, wow, this is a very advanced group. I noticed, Bill, that from the comments and the chat board. So feel free to make comments as you feel. And even though this is an advanced, if there's a class or group or study, if there's a question that you have, raise your hand or put a Q in front of your statement as a question, and we'll look at that. Melissa is very well versed and experienced in these matters, as you can imagine, and she loves Francis Lucille as most of us all of us that know him do, and she was with us in that book study. She follows his weekly broadcast, so she's well versed in these areas. And Melissa, let's look at page one, or not page one,
Absolutely. In
page
fact,
one of chapter two.
I was going to suggest that because this chapter is a very fundamental, foundational chapter, and uh, uh, every single paragraph is kind of like it's a logical brick that's being placed to create this foundation, and so actually I was going to go literally paragraph by paragraph fairly quickly, but recognizing that if we leave any of it out, it's kind of like you can't do a mathematical proof without having each piece in place. And if you have those pieces in place, it will make more sense.
Well, we're going to need to condense
I
the
know.
reading,
Yes.
though. So we need
Yeah.
to, if we can highlight on the pages, that will be
Okay.
more efficient, and we'll be able to also engage the audience.
So we're beginning with the very first paragraph. What he's stating the fundamental truth that the essence of anything is that which cannot be separated from it. So none of the thoughts or images or feelings, perceptions, none of these things that arise and then pass, none of them are of our essence. None of them are essential to us. And he uses one of his favorite metaphors, just as a movie that's projected on the screen, it is not integral to the screen. The screen is integral, but the movie is continually changing. So this chapter is going to be exploring what is the essence of being itself. So what we're seeing here as we move down the page is when we're divested of all the various qualities and limitations that we acquire from experience, moment by moment by moment, whatever is arising is also passing, but only that which is intrinsic to us, which is our unconditioned being, is what remains. So he's pointing out that anything that arises and then passes, that is not what is intrinsic or essential.
Right.
And we cannot call it then our being, because being remains always unconditioned and essential. So we can continue on to the next page. So that was very, very important, that we cannot call anything that is just arising, we can't call it our being,
Right.
because
Right.
being is without limitations, and it's
I
not.
do have Melissa, on this last paragraph, when it says, in fact, we cannot even call it our being, for without limitations, it is no longer colored by the characteristics of a person. And my question for Rupert when he comes back, I'm going to come back to this as a question, is this individuated, even though it's not the person? Is it individuated?
Well, that's a very interesting philosophical question. And again, that probes more deeply. I often like to use that word, individuated, that each aware being has an individuated perspective of the infinite being. So individuated, I think, is a more subtle word that doesn't have the usual connotations that we have when we use the word person. person it comes with a lot of conditional ideas and beliefs,
Yeah.
whereas individuation is I think it's a better word to use, and I like to use that.
There's before we go to the next page, we'll come back to the question on the tornado, but Patty mentioned something indivisible, or she said, our being says two to me. And I've heard Rupert say that that's also a concession. Being, so isness is, if you use words, you're trying to point to the thing that isn't a word. And
Right.
Patty,
Yes,
Patty
exactly.
said, our being says two to me. What do you think about that?
Well, I don't see where. Oh, you mean because of our? Oh, you
Yeah,
are.
that
Ah,
does. That is.
yes, yes. Well, Patty, what I would say is hang
Us.
on, hold tight, because we're going to get to that. What you've jumped ahead,
Yeah.
and this is where we have to follow the logical flow here.
Okay.
We're going to start with thinking in terms of my being, myself. But then
Yeah.
you'll see very quickly here, it becomes clear how it becomes our being, because being is one infinite, and each of us is the individuation of the one.
Yes. And that's why I had that question, because there's a line somewhere that says that God is the sum total of all of its parts. And right, so God is everything and the oneness at the same time.
Yes, but it can be a little tricky when you think in terms of sums and parts, because you see, this is another aspect of being, is it is indivisible.
Yes.
It is always one whole.
Yes.
There are no parts. There are no parts.
Thank you.
An individuation, I sometimes think of it maybe like a hologram, where each microscopic uh, iota of the hologram is the entire hologram. The macrocosm is in the microcosm,
Yeah.
and it is never divided. It is
Yeah. Let's
completely
not let's not get stuck there. We could
right,
stay
right.
stuck on that issue.
Yes,
Just
that's why.
and we're just trying to communicate the essence
Yes, that's
of
right.
the
That's right.
direct experience, and these are just pointers to have the experience.
Right, right. So on to the next page then. The second paragraph is a very important point. Being is not a quality or an attribute belonging to a person. The person is the temporary name and form of what is actually the intimate, impersonal, infinite
There
being.
it is. There's the answer.
There it is. That's right. So being impersonal, being does not share any of the limits of person. It can't even be fathomed. It is unfathomable, the infinitude of being.
Hmm.
And yet, there's a paradox in this. At the same time, it is the ultimate intimate experience, and at the same time, it is the ultimate infinite experience. Again, the macrocosm and the microcosm are one. So let's continue on. So what we're doing here in this portion of the chapter, this first little section of the chapter, is he's exploring some of the attributes that come from recognizing that being is impersonal and infinite. This impersonal, infinite being is what shines in each of us as the sense of being myself before it is qualified by experience. So it is universal. You see, it shines in each of us. It is universal. It is one and it is universal. Now, the next paragraph, again, a very important one. Divested of all the qualities of experience, we find again a few of these we can pick out a few of these kinds of qualities.
Yeah.
Infinite. What is infinite is perfect. There's nothing missing. It's all there. It's perfect. It's whole. It's indivisible. So therefore, all all things, animals, people, objects, you name it, they share. Now he often will use the word borrow. I find that to be I don't like that word so much because nothing is borrowed. You don't have to pay it
Melissa
back.
doesn't like that word too much.
Uh-huh, uh-huh.
Okay. That's
Because
okay. You can do that.
it, I prefer to think of it as we all share our existence in being.
Yes.
Now again, even Rupert himself has lessons about how being and existence are not exactly the same thing. He points out how existence, means to stand out from. So when we see something that exists, such as, say, ourselves as a person, we exist, but our existence is arising in being. So the being is the infinite, the particular existence is the individuation,
Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
the particular instance
And
of
and
the,
and the rising and the experience, it does not change beingness. It does not change that which is always present.
exactly. As you'll see later in the chapter,
Yeah.
being is completely unchangeable. It is
Yeah.
never touched in any
Yeah.
way, shape, or form. So what we found here is a number of qualities. Now we're going to explore this other quality. The unity of being shines in each of us as the sense of being myself, or the knowledge I am. And it shines in the isness of everything else that we see,
Yes.
everything else that we experience. That isness is the amness that each of us experiences. Being is one. Everything that is and everything I am is an equation. The I am equals the all is. There is only one being. Being is one.
Yeah.
So he finishes this little section by pointing out that
You're on page 12, right?
yes, right,
Uh, the,
just before the three little dots,
okay, good.
that the recognition of this of our shared being can be felt as the love or the beauty that we may experience in various objects, love for another person or an animal, or beauty in the world, because what is happening at a very fundamental level is the being in us is recognizing and resonating with the being that is present in 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 all of existence. So
Yeah.
there's a resonance. So the love and the beauty is the resonance that is being experienced.
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
Melissa, there was a comment in the chat that from Melanie that relates to the beingness. She says like the rays of the sun.
Mm-hmm.
And that's true. It's not separate from the sun, and yet it is the same as the sun,
Yes.
and
Yes.
it's shining as the sun shines.
Yes. Yes.
And before we move on, let's. There's a question about divesting. I just want to look at this question on at 12:17. It says, even the term being myself seems individuated. It should be just being. Nothing else is happening but the one being.
Yeah.
No, that's not what I was. I
Oh.
was looking for something about being divested. Somebody,
Well, divested, of qualities. Yes, yes, yes. You see, what we're doing right now is we're doing what Rupert calls the inward facing path. Although we're also kind of, as this chapter proceeds, it kind of mixes in a little bit of the outward going path as well. In the inward going path, we first find what I am. Naked, I am
Yes.
divested of all the qualities.
Yes.
I am tall or short. I am fat or thin. I am this and not that, etc., etc. Divested of all of that.
The
Just
question
coming
is,
to I am.
the question is, what does divest of qualities and limitations
What does
mean?
it mean?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, what we're doing is we're very gently teasing it apart, like as if you were to have a fabric of gossamer silk, and you're very, very gently teasing the threads apart. It's not a violent kind of process. We're gently taking away all of these other qualities and looking just at what is the basic being that is experiencing all of these other qualities. So it's a very gentle teasing apart.
That was beautifully stated, Melissa. That's why before Melissa
Okay.
came on, I just am so happy that she said yes to be a co-host because you just have a way of explaining things like that. That was awesome.
Well,
Thank you for that.
much of what I have learned has been from my teachers as well. So this is an unbroken continuity
Yeah,
of understanding that
yeah,
is flowing through all of us.
beautiful.
So now in this next little section, after the three little dots,
Okay.
what we're doing now for a little while is we're now looking at what being is not. We looked previously at some of the qualities that being is: universal, infinite, one, perfect, whole, indivisible. Now we're going to look at some of the things that being is not. And traditionally, this is called the neti,
Yes,
N-E-T-I, neti aspect, meaning not this, not that.
yes.
So here are a few of the things
Only for the purpose of establishing our primary unchanging
yes.
self.
Yes, exactly. That's
Yes.
right. Yes. Yes, because again, you have to tease out what being is from what it really essentially is not. What is essential
Yes.
is what it is. What is
Thank you.
non-essential, it is not.
Right.
So basically in this section, he points to, and I'll just cover this very, very quickly here, that he's pointing out that being is prior to and independent of anything that is arising in it, such as thoughts and feelings and perceptions and ideas and emotions, anything related to the body or anything related to our perceptions of the world. That being is inherently free, inherently free of all of those qualifications. And in particular, again, as we just travel quickly down the page 13, we see he points out that it's independent of the body, because after all, the body, think about it, our bodies are continually changing. This is not the body I had when I was 12 years old. And it will not be the body that I have when I'm 90 years old. So it's not body, because body is changing. Body arises in our awareness of being, but it is not, being is not the body. Next thing that he points out, the same is true of our perceptions of the world. So the world that appears to us is not the being. It's not essential to the being.
Right.
The next item is no relationship is
So
essential.
we're halfway down on page 13, right?
We're almost down to the bottom of 13, the last paragraph. So we looked
Okay.
at the middle paragraph was pointing out that we're not the body. We, so we do not need to change any of the experiences in the body. The body might not be well, or the body might be hurting, or the body might be uh, going through changes.
Yeah.
But what is essential to our being is not the body.
Yeah. Well, there's two things that I see, and I saw that Rana mentioned this in the chat. The second paragraph, very first couple of lines, I love where Rupert says, "For this reason, there is never any need to manipulate or get rid of any thought or feeling, but only to see clearly that our essential self, the essence that you were describing in the beginning, or being, is prior to and dependent of thoughts and feelings."
And independent. It's it's prior to and
And
independent.
independent. Did I say
Independent.
dependent? Yeah.
Yes, yes.
Independent of thought.
That's that's extremely essential there. It is
Oops.
prior to and independent. Our
Yeah.
thoughts and feelings and emotions and whatnot, they are dependent on being, but being is not dependent on
Yes.
them.
Yes.
Kind of like there's another metaphor that I happen to particularly like, and that Francis often uses, of the ocean and the waves on top of the ocean. The ocean is whether the waves are there or not. The
Yeah.
waves, however, cannot be there unless the ocean is there. So the ocean is the essential aspect. The waves come and go and arise and pass. They are not the essential part.
Yes.
The ocean is like being, the waves are like everything else that we might be experiencing. It's all arising and it's all passing.
Yeah.
And beneath that, being is completely untouched and
Yes.
undisturbed.
Yes. And Melissa, in down towards the bottom where you were just reading, I mean, above that a little bit, above the second to the last paragraph, it says it's only necessary to recognize
Right.
that our being is prior to and independent of. So it's only to recognize it, and that sort of establishes our unchanging knowing of our essential being.
Yes, and later in the chapter, it delves even more deeply into how important it is. What we are doing here is we are stepping out of ignorance, just as simply as this, by recognizing what truly is true about us as our being. We are literally stepping out of ignorance and into enlightenment, just that easily.
Yes, yes. Thank you, everyone, for participating in the commentary on the board, and thank you for the questions. And there was a question about how long this we're together. We're here for 1 hour. The only meetings that are 75 minutes are the live meetings with Rupert.
Okay, so continuing right along then on to page 14. So
Okay.
now he's pointed out that body isn't essential, world isn't essential, relationship isn't essential, and then he's pointing out no activity is essential to us. Anything, any activity we might engage in is that we might get seemingly completely absorbed in, but when it stops, it's being has not in any way, shape, or form has it changed. And he ends this little section by basically by summing it all up by saying nothing ever happens to pure being. It remains. The waves continue to fluctuate all over the place. Sometimes they're big, sometimes they're small, but being is the ocean. the still and unchanging ocean beneath it.
Yes.
So on to the next little section, and I'm trying to move it along here. So
Thank you. You're
now,
doing
okay, now we're going to we're going to explore a little further about self, about ourself, and here we're equating our true self is our being. So our self alone remains, regardless of what experiences come and go, and that the essential self is always and already, before it is colored by any experience. That's the second little paragraph here after the three dots. It is always and already. And on the basis of that understanding, we can understand a little bit better when in the Judeo-Christian tradition, when Jesus made that very radical statement, before Abraham, I am, that got him, it got the ire of all of his society was raised when he made that audacious statement, because they all took it personal. They thought he was talking about himself personally, when what he was talking about, the pure essence of being, the
Yeah.
I am. Before Abraham, I am.
Yes. Yes. Jenny mentioned something on the chat that says this part tells us how to explore divesting.
Yes, yes, it does. Yes, that's true. Yes. So what we see now, as we continue, we're seeing that that our self is never in any way changing. It's not evolving. All that we're doing now, we're not changing anything in this journey of exploring. We are simply seeing clearly. We're simply seeing clearly what has always been there and always is there, but is usually ignored. It's the great ignorance. And when it is not ignored, we have, in fact, the great enlightenment, simply by no longer ignoring it and paying attention. So continuing on to page 15, we see here Rupert is stating that being is always in exactly the same pristine condition. Pristine, as it always has been, although there is no has been, it always is in the present. And that's a subtle point too. There's no has been,
Right.
there's no past and future. It always is
Yes.
in the present. So what we see is that we are always finding the same self. That's the last part of this first paragraph. It's the same self. It's the same I. Whether we were 5 years old and said, I am Mary Smith, or 105 and saying, I am Mary Smith. The I has never changed.
Right.
The I of self has
And
never changed.
for all of these writing, all of these book studies, I mean, especially the focus here is being myself, and the focus this week is our naked being. So it's really trying to point us to living this naked experience, living this being myself experience as our primary understanding, and that will bring a different experience actually to the bodysuit.
Yes, yes, yes. And each person has to find that for themselves. It cannot be, nobody else can, can show you what your own unique individuation will discover as you begin this process of stepping from ignorance to enlightenment. And in fact, in the at the very middle of the page here, what Rupert points out is that just like when we take off our clothes at night and our naked body is revealed, we are revealing to ourselves our naked beingness. We are divesting all of all the aspects of experience, and we're revealing the naked being. And revealing is a very important word here. This is, in fact, a great revelation. We're noticing something that has always been there. It's not new. It's always been there, but we have always ignored it. And it's like, it's more than just the elephant in the room, you know. It's the wholeness that has been ignored.
Yes.
And the great revelation is, it's here. It's you. It is your very self. It is your very being.
The essence is always present. And if you take that and put a symbol on it, God is always present. God isn't a thing out there. It's the same essence of being that we're speaking about.
Exactly. It is right here, right now. And in fact, the very last paragraph on this page, on page 15, where he points out our being never leaves us. Now, he makes a statement here, and I've crossed this one out because, again, there's some things here and there. I think because he was saying these things in a meditation, sometimes a little something is a little misleading. When he says, we take our being with us wherever we go, I crossed that out because being doesn't go anywhere, and you don't take it anywhere. It always is. What already is. But the important word is present. And in fact, another way of putting it is presently present presence. Presently meaning right here, right now. Present meaning here. And presence meaning beingness. So it is now, here, being. And some of you might remember that back in 1971, Ram Dass wrote a very pivotal book called Be Here Now.
Yes.
He wrote that soon after returning from India, where he had encountered this teaching from his teachers in India. And he wrote that book, Be Here Now, pointing to presently present presence. That's what Be Here Now actually means. So let's continue on to page 16. We're getting
moving right along. We have about 15 minutes left, a little more.
Okay, all right. So here again, we're kind of again exploring just a few more qualities and noticing again what we have divested, what are not the essence of being, and then we're using various metaphors to try to point to some of these qualities of being, but in truth, being has no describable qualities. It is so ineffable. We cannot find any words that describe it. We're like the Zen master that points to the moon, and we get hung up on the finger, and we never really see the moon because it's beyond description. Mm-hmm. So everything that is used here is really a metaphor. And as we progress down the page here, we see that he's using a few metaphors that are very useful. Transparent, spacious, silent, still. That's at the very bottom of the page. And then he also goes on to peaceful and fulfilled, which he actually describes more on the next page. But he does say in the very last sentence, to suggest that our essential being has any qualities at all is itself a concession. And we have to do that because we are communicating by language. And thank God, thank heavens for language. But
Yeah.
we have to remember that we're pointing at something that we actually have no words for. There
Yeah.
are no words for it.
Yes. Yes.
Okay. So on page 7,
It's God pointing to itself
yes.
that's not there.
Yes, yes. Yeah, that's not there in any discernible way,
Yes.
but we know it because we are it.
Yes.
We know it in our very being
Yeah.
because it is our very being.
Yeah.
So again, a couple more qualities that he points to are the peace, because it is absent of any agitation. Remembering again, it's the ocean beneath the waves. The waves, there may be all kinds of agitation in the waves, in the various, whatever the Sturm und Drang of daily experience might show us. But the being beneath those waves is absolutely undisturbed. So in fact, there is peace.
Yeah.
And then in the next paragraph, he points out that there is no lack in being because it's infinite. It's
Yeah.
infinite. It's ineffable. It's infinite. So it is completely fulfilled.
And can I just add that
Yes.
this understanding, these ideas, when they're understood and brought in, and they nourish and nurture an awakening experience that if it had an experience of lack, it loses its flavor. It divests from the experience, and the flavor of lack is dissolved or divested from the experience as the understanding is expanded and
Absolutely.
yeah.
Absolutely true. And in fact, as one contemplates deeper and deeper and more about what this is pointing to, what you will find is that even when something, out of, whatever arises, that may initially cause some difficulty, or some problem, because life is constantly throwing things at us.
Yeah.
But that as we become accustomed to returning back to knowing what what we really are, that whatever the problem might be, we have a new perspective from which to view it, and it changes
Yeah.
the nature of the problem.
Yeah.
It takes on
By not touching it, not trying to change it, by establishing oneself as the self.
yes, yes, and by establishing oneself in that way, it's very often what we'll find is a solution that we hadn't thought of appears spontaneously,
Yeah.
because we are coming from a knowing of our unlimited, absolutely fulfilled and absolutely peaceful truth about ourselves. Then lo and behold, something new and spontaneous has a chance to appear for us,
Yeah.
something unconditioned. Whereas before we only were looking for our conditioned solutions. This allows us to experience an unconditioned solution. Okay, so
What else on page 17?
okay, well, actually, now he's this next little section, 17, 18, 19. He's going into one of his favorite kinds of metaphors, which I appreciate. He talks about the actor, John Smith, who dresses up into the costume of King Lear and plays on the stage as King Lear. And here again, this is a metaphor for how being individuates into a seeming person, and has various experiences as a seeming person. But in the experience of the person, lo and behold, there is limitation, and from that limitation comes suffering. Suffering comes from that limitation. As long as we are caught in the drama of the experience of being a person, we are stuck in the limitation and the suffering. And so then on to page 19, only once John Smith finally remembers that he's not King Lear. Those problems of King Lear are not, in truth, they are not his problems.
Right.
He returns back to, as you see in the last paragraph of this little section, he says, yes, I'm not King Lear. I am John Smith. But what we say is, I am I. I am pure being.
Yes. Yeah. That's our escape hatch, or that's our liberation.
That's our liberation. Yes.
That's and that is experience. What this is why mantras, as you're opening to the truth, mantras like I am can be very powerful mantras to
Yes.
bring us back to what John Smith was self-realizing. It's a self-realizing experience.
Absolutely. Yes, absolutely. So that finishes page 19. And really then the last page and a half is just a kind of a reiteration that the just like John Smith had his recognition, the recognizing, the bringing to awareness what really is so. When we bring that to awareness, when we stop ignoring, when we fall then out of ignorance, we return back to our true state of enlightenment, because we are no longer ignoring or overlooking. That's at the very top of page 20.
Mhm.
By a recollection or recognition that it is present now and always has been, it is no longer being ignored or overlooked. And the next sentence, I think, is a really important one.
Are you on the second paragraph from the top of page 20?
Yes, correct.
So before we leave that, that paragraph, it is the revelation of our essential, irreducible nature before it is obscured by experience. And with this revelation, and I just want to point to that word, revelation. These
Yes.
these are glimpses. These are experienced glimpses of the experience that you have, and I've heard Rupert refer to this as falling in love. These are glimpses of our beingness, the essential nature of self. So revelation isn't like you're like you step through the ta-da. It's glimpses such as this that are little hints to our liberation.
Yes, it's simply revealing, as if say you had a very, very dirty window, and you're simply wiping it clean, and you're looking at what was already there. You were overlooking it, you were ignoring. So the revelation is just simply the revealing what was already there,
Yes,
what
yes,
already is there, that
yes.
we cannot leave ourself. Ourself is always what we are.
Yeah. Just a couple of references. Davier, thank you for your comment. And thank you, Manfred, just Manfred, for your answers on the chat board. I just want to say you guys are really supporting the comments nicely, and I appreciate that. Go ahead, Melissa.
Well, that's basically it. And then the very last sentence on page 21. And just as it is not necessary to undress in order to feel our naked body, it's not necessary to change any of the content of experience. It's not necessary to change the waves in order to be in touch with our innate peace and happiness, because we already are the infinite ocean that is beneath.
Yes, yes, yes. There was a question about someone had trouble with understanding the metaphor of the body. Rupert says, this is Cynthia Perry. Rupert says we cannot step out of our body. We can step out of our clothes, but not our body. This is confusing me. I thought
Yes, yes.
I am
It
not
is
a,
a confusing metaphor,
yeah,
and that's actually that's very discerning of you to notice that. And in fact, I made a note about that as well. So it's important to realize he's just using a kind of an alternate way of thinking about something that feels very accessible.
yeah. It's a
That just,
symbol.
yes, that's right, something that we're very familiar with,
Yeah,
but in no way, shape, or form is the body what we really are as beings.
yeah,
In fact, he points out that the body is not our being. The body is one of our experiences that arise in our being. It's one of the waves on the ocean, but we are the infinite ocean. The being is what is always, already, always behind it.
yes, yeah. Thank you for the question and also the answer, because that can be a little bit confusing. And if you because we're not the bodysuit, we are the awareness of the experience only. We're aware of it, and even that is a concession because there's no we, and awareness just is.
Yes, yes. And as you'll see as we get into further chapters, it gets even more subtle, because not only are we not the body, we're not the mind either. We're not the mind or the feelings or the emotions or the thoughts. That's when it gets really, it becomes, it's very subtle. And you may have to let it kind of grow on you. At first, you might find that your mind is going to rebel against that, but that's okay. Sit with it,
Yeah.
contemplate it.
Yes. Yeah, there was a section that we kind of skipped over. I want to point to just because we have 2 minutes left, and I loved this section at it's the last paragraph on page, or the next to the last paragraph on page 17. Rupert says, as soon as our self or being disentangles itself from the adventure of experience and returns to itself, it recognizes or tastes itself again as it essentially is. That taste is happiness itself.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
But notice there's another little stumbling block there where he says returns to itself. It doesn't return anywhere, because being never left, and it can't return. So
Good
so
catch.
so really all we're doing is we're turning round to look more
Yeah.
clearly at what already is always
Nice.
there. There's
Yeah.
no returning. It's just a turning back.
Nice. See, you guys, I'm so happy, Melissa, that you joined us as a co-host this week. Thank you for that. And I think we're going to have a replacement for Mary Morgan. She's not feeling up to it, so we'll have a someone else as a co-host next week. And we're at the end of our time. Thank you so much, Melissa.
Thank you.
And thank you, everyone, for being here. This has been a joy. I love having these book studies. I said to Melissa before we started, the drinking in of these book studies is having an effect on my experience. It's like drinking in the truth.
Yep.
Yeah, it's just
Yeah.
delicious. All right, well, we'll see you all next week on December 29th. We'll be back for chapter 3. It's the I am chapter. And I'm not sure who the co-host is going to be, but I know it'll be good. And we'll see you all next week. Bye, everyone. Thank you, Melissa, and happy Christmas, happy New Year, Merry Christmas, and blessings on you and your
Blessings.
family. And eat plenty of good food. This is a time to have fun with that. Okay.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone. Very much.
Bless
Bye-bye.
you.
Thank you.
Nice.
Happy
Very
holidays.
Merry
Happy holidays.
Christmas. Happy